Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. In this video I'd like to show you how to take cuttings of plants, and this is just going to be a general thing about how to take cuttings. These are going to be stem cuttings that I'll be doing, most common type of cutting that most people will be doing, and also I'm going to be explaining a bit of the science behind it and why you have to cut it in certain places, and just how the stems work in a plant and why you have to cut it in the right place and how to get the best results to get your plant nicely rooted like this basil plant here. So first of all plants, most plants you'll get are actually called dicots, and they are the ones that are basically not grasses and not plants that have long thin leaves. So that's the cutting I'm going to be talking about today. It's just a stem cutting, so any kind of shrub, most plants you're going to be thinking about. There's very few plants that aren't dicots that you'll be taking cuttings of. Those ones you just kind of self-divide. So for a normal plant, you'll have a stem, and the best example is something like a bamboo cane. This is actually a begonia, but it shows it very well. So with this, you'll have leaves coming off from these nodes, and what you want to do is take a cutting at the node, and I'll tell you why. So you can see with the nodes here, the nodes is actually where they've got the right kind of material for the plants to put out new growth. So you can see here, this is the old leaf scar where the leaf used to be. And just above that at the node is where a new shoot is coming out. Same again up here, and further down the stem, which is in fact this one here, you can see more little buds starting to grow in all those sections. So in a plant stem, and I've cut this one in half to show it more clearly, you've got material that transports the water and the sugars up and down the plants. So this is just kind of like vessels. You can think of it as like a pipe network. It varies from different plant to different plant, but in a simplified manner, it's a series of pipes that water and nutrients can flow through, and also sugars. So between each node is just a transportation system. At each node it's a bit more complicated. This is where the transportation system then links in with the leaves, exchanges the water and the nutrients with the leaves, and also takes back some of the sugar from the leaf. It's also where new stems can grow. So because of that, there's a little layer in the middle here which has got some special special cells which can reproduce into any other kind of cell. So in the middle here, there are some of those cells, but they're generally quite dormant and they don't do much. But in the middle here, they're much more active. So if you're going to get any new growth from a plant, it's nearly always going to be from here. And the other reason it's good to cut a plant at this section, just below a node and not in the middle, is because in a node, there's actually a barrier. So at the bottom here, you can see it quite well. There's a barrier going across, and what that means is infection can't go up and down the stem quite as easily. So if you were to, for example, if I was to cut this stem in half, so it's in the middle of the node there, so this infection here, if you did have any sort of infection at the bottom of the stem, it would travel up, and most of that bottom half will die off, go rotten, and then if it gets rotten enough, it could even break past the barrier. For example, this one here is cut off much closer to the node. So if there is any infection, it's only going to reach as far as the node, and hopefully that won't be a large enough infection that it can break through that section of node. So going on to how to take the actual cuttings, that's the kind of the science behind it. You want to get a plant such as this basil here. Now, basil is a very good example of one that you can do very easily. Mint as well is a very easy plant to take cuttings from, but as I say, you can take this with pretty much any plant which you know has stems and leaves coming off the stems. If it's just leaves coming out the ground, you can't do this because they don't have stems, but any plant with a stem basically, which is most dicot plants, is one you can do it with. So you want to find a nice healthy piece of growth at the top here. So you can see it's very healthy basil. The healthier the plant, the more energy it's going to have, the more vigor it's going to have, and resistance to any disease for it to grow. So what you want to do, select a nice healthy stem such as this one. Make sure there's no flowers on it, because you don't want any energy going into the flowers or into fruit. And you just want to cut this off just above a node. So you can see down here, there's a node, and there's two little stems coming out of the side. So I'm going to cut it off just above there. And the reason for that is that's just going to continue the growth up from those two stems quite happily. And you're not going to have a weird dead bit of stem just sticking at the top that won't regrow. Because as I said, it only grows out of the nodes, it doesn't grow out of a bare bit of stem, so you need to cut it at that point. So the next stage is you'll have your actual cutting. So taking your cutting, you'll see here we've got a long piece of stem, and generally what will happen is there's growth hormones that come from the shoot, which is at the top, This is called the apical meristem, and it's the part where the plant is dividing, producing lots of new cells. It's also producing a lot of hormones called auxins. Now these hormones, they travel down the stem. They do several jobs. I won't list all the different jobs that they do in this video, but the main thing for this video is that they encourage root growth. So the hormones will come down, and they always come down to the lowest part in the stem. So if in this instance, they'll come to the bottom here. But the problem is, if all the hormones are collected in the bottom of the stem, this area hasn't got an internode, so this area isn't going to produce roots that well. However, this area up here does have an internode and will produce roots very well. So what you want to do is cut it off just below the internode so that all the hormones fall down in the stem, and they collect at that lowest point where the internode is, and that will give the highest chance of success for it to work. So then you just want to cut any side stems off, any leaves as well, because you don't want the leaves to be underwater or under soil if you're doing it in soil. For this example, I'll just be doing a water cutting, which is one of the simplest ones. You will have to look up the plant individually, which one works best. Some plants grow better starting in water, other ones start better in soil. Just depends on the plant, but for this example, I'm using basil because I can sow you in water, and using a water technique I can really easily show you how the roots look. So with basil, water rooting is very easy. So there you are, that's the cutting there. You can expect the roots to come out of the internodes, and I'll give you a good example here of one I took about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you can see there's plenty of roots growing on it. I'll actually leave it in the water because the roots are bunching up when I take them out. But if I can get this in focus, you can hopefully see. The vast majority of the roots are coming out the very bottom there of the stem, and that's where the internode is. That's also where the lowest point is, so all the hormones, all the auxins from the shoots have collected in the bottom there, and they've encouraged the stems that are lying dormant in there to start growing and start turning into roots, because the plant knows it doesn't have any roots. All those auxins aren't going to the old roots, they're just collecting the stem, and that's encouraging the plant to grow new roots. You'll also see higher up on this stem, there's quite a few roots coming out of the other internode, which is this section up here. So you can see there's an internode here, you can see the old leaf scars there, and from this section up here there's quite a lot of roots coming out. There's also a few roots coming out the middle, but generally not a lot. So you can see there, that's why you really want to be cutting it at an internode, because that's where all the roots are going to come from. If you had it lower down, as I say, the hormones would collect at the bottom of the shoot between an internode, and it wouldn't root as well. So you can see there, plenty of healthy roots. So what you want to do is pop your cutting in the water, keep replacing the water every few days. Within 2 or 3 weeks you're going to have a really good healthy root system like this. Then all you need to do is get a pot with some compost, carefully place the roots inside. Now you don't want to touch the roots too much because they're going to be very fragile. When they're living in water they produce very fragile roots. So you want to very carefully place it in without damaging too many of the roots. I'm just going to lift up the leaves here and pull the roots just gently apart, because if I just push them straight down they'd probably snap. They are very fragile at the moment. So there we are, the roots are kind of nicely evenly spaced out in there. I could try and space them out a bit more, but as I say, as little touching as the roots you can do, the better, because you'll damage them if you're not careful. And then I'm just going to sprinkle the compost on top, just holding it with one hand, sprinkling with the other. Hopefully my arm isn't in shot of the camera. There we are. Just covering it up to where the roots start from. So that's the 2 internodes covered. There you are, that's a healthy little basil plant ready to grow. I just need to give this some water and it will take off, and probably in a few months time it'll be as big as this basil plant back here. You can see, very healthy plant. It's done quite well. And this one was actually grown from seed, but growing basil from cuttings is a very easy process. So there you are, that's how you can take cuttings for most plants, I would say. As I say, if you do have a plant book, do look up online or search online or look up in the plant book the exact technique, because some plants this doesn't work on, and as I say, some it works best in soil, some it works best in water. Just have a look, or drop me a question in the comment section below and I can tell you which technique is best for them. And there you are, that's how you take plant cutting. It's very easy and it's a great way to make new plants.